So our next person, sorry, my voice squeaked, is Kim Dill-McFarland. Her talk is called Fostering R Usage as the First Bioinformatician in My Department. And a little bit about Kim. She's a bioinformatician at University of Washington, and she works at the intersection of microbiology and computer science, applying computational approaches to biological problems. So take it away, Kim.
Great, thank you. So today I'm going to talk about really what has worked for me in fostering R usage among my group as really the first person with my title in the entire building. No one really knew what I was when I started. So where I am to begin with, just to set the stage, I'm at the University of Washington in the School of Medicine, which means that I function in between a lot of very diverse backgrounds. So we have clinical physicians who are actively practicing. We have research physicians who aren't, but are doing clinical research. And we have a lot of wet lab scientists, either from an academic background or a medical background, all over the place. And when I came to this particular group of researchers, there was really not a lot of coding. There was one person who used STATA and had a couple of STATA scripts that no one else was allowed to touch because they would break and they would ruin everything. And so into this, here came me, somebody with wet lab biology background, but who functions entirely in coding now on my computer, not physically allowed in the lab because of safety things that I don't want to do. And here I came in, and what I want to do, right, is I want to go to this group of people and be like, R is the best. GitHub will save your future self from so many problems. This is going to be amazing. I'm coming in. I'm going to change everything. But I know from past experiences, other institutions, and being an undergraduate educator, that often results in some unfortunate feelings among the group, from anywhere from just apathy of like, that sounds great, but that's not useful to me, so you do you, all the way to just complete despair of, oh, that is great. I'm going to try it with no support and help, and it's going to go poorly, and then I'm going to hate coding, and it's going to take months of backtracking to get us back to just you wanting to even try again. So unfortunately, what I actually did when I started, because I was the first bioinformatician, there was a lot of data to work with and a lot of things to do. What I started doing that I also knew wouldn't really work, but was just I had to start here, was I worked in my own little corner. I worked, mainly in R and with GitHub over off on the side. And, when I had the chance to be like, R, hello, see over someone's shoulder, like, hey, would you like me to write an R script for that? It would make your life so much easier. Hey, I made a GitHub organization. Anyone in the, group can use it. But really, nobody heard that. When they heard it, they still didn't really know how it applied to their work and how spending time learning something new would in the end help them. So nothing really changed for many months at a time. And so the rest of this, I'm going to really focus on talking about what worked, like what made things happen later when I had the chance to really devote time to it that brought us to a very different space. So the first thing is I became much more a part of the group just by nature of having been there more than 5 minutes. And I'm really going to talk about the workshops and office hours that resulted in a community that led to, in the end, general positive experiences with coding, and even some people who I've heard uttered the phrase, I love R, with no prompting. I didn't prompt them. And now, about 2 years into my position, STATA is gone, our license has expired, and we're not paying for it again. And we have quite a few people in the lab, including clinicians working with GitHub, working with R, and some working with both on a routine basis. So the first really big area that I got the most impact was, unfortunately, the most time-consuming for me, but was workshops. So these started out as kind of an ad hoc basis of like, oh, you need a thing, I'll spend half an hour to an hour teaching on that. But again, they didn't necessarily see how that worked on the bigger scale, and we didn't have the foundation. So what ended up working was creating a GitHub repo with all of our workshop materials, which has the side benefit, right, of Now you have to go to GitHub to get the materials. So now you're at least a little bit familiar with GitHub, even if you didn't want to be. So it's a bit of a sneaky way to get a double learning in there. And what I started with was GitHub. And this was, before the changeover, really. This was when I was still just like quietly projecting, because I was using Git, I was using GitHub. I made an organization for my own work so that I could get the free academic features. And then just said, hey, everyone, use this. And nothing really happened. And you'll notice a little bit on this timeline, there's a little something that happened right around, this big switch from one workshop in the course of many months to them being several a month. And so for me, in this case, right before this time, I had just gotten buy-in from my major supervisors saying, yes, we want you to develop some workshops. Yes, we want to put time and effort towards this. We support you. And then shutdown happened. And all of a sudden we had the entire lab who physically couldn't do their jobs, because you can't do chemistry and biology research at home, not very safe. And so it actually fast-tracked this process. All of a sudden, everyone was saying, yes, we want workshops. I have the time to devote to this now. I can see how this is going to be useful, and none of my current work is going to hurt. And so this really launched into a massive undertaking for several months of introducing R, doing really targeted workshops of you have RNA-seq data. I'm going to show you how in R to do this, it's differential expression, it's DE analysis, all the way to other, tools, and repeating intro R when we have, new people coming in. And for me, really what maximized the effects of these workshops, the first was customizing it. I found that fewer workshops that used data actually from our lab were more effective than the CARS data set and more general, which yes, took more work to make for me, but I did have this buy-in and support to do that at that time. Several shorter sessions because we had to be on electronics, on Zoom for us. Much better for us to do several shorter sessions. When we go back to in-person, I definitely will still be doing some trial and error of short in-person versus just dedicating a day, but at least in this context, shorter was better. Getting the higher ups to attend showed I didn't even really have to do this. They were also in shutdown. They also couldn't do their jobs very well. So they were also like, yeah, sure, I'll learn too. And so it really just showed that we had buy-in, that everyone who's here was supporting it, and that, your boss is considering the 2 hours you're spending in this workshop work time, because they're there too. This was less of the case for my current position because I was doing it, but from my past undergraduate education experiences, it was really important to just highlight, eliminating costs. I didn't want the undergraduate in the lab who's working for free often to have less ability to take these as the senior scientist who, has a salary. And then finally, because we were already on Zoom, I just started recording them and had to get over that initial fear of oh no, when I say something wrong, it's going to be permanently on the internet, which is still true, but I guess I'm just more okay with it. And so one of the positives of the online remote is they're really easy to record and then share. So now that our new hires have intro R recorded, that that's just part of our onboarding now, is for them to take a 2-hour intro R with virtual me, and then I'm available for questions afterward. The pitfalls that I found to avoid, the biggest being, it's kind of outside of an R thing, but just in general, getting too excited and then coding beyond foundational knowledge, particularly in statistics. I can teach someone who knows nothing about statistics how to run a super complicated linear mixed effects model, but that actually turned out to be a really, really bad idea, because then it got misapplied, even though the code would run very successfully. Teaching what I thought, so the advice to you is don't teach just what you think they should know. That's how I started. I was like, you should learn GitHub first. Let's do that. It turned out it was better for them to learn R, so then they could see how GitHub was helpful to track their code. And then finally, a weird one I found is don't be too practiced and polished. Practice your material, but either hard code in errors so people can see how you deal with them, as well as leave some space for that random tangent where you're going to potentially live code something you've never tested. Because it's community building of I don't type everything perfect the first time. I don't know every R error. Yes, I Google R errors on a weekly basis, if not daily, and showing that you're a learner along with them, that you're never done learning in R in particular. So the other, switching gears, the other big thing that I found that really was the most impactful was doing these open office hours, where again, remotely, I have just a link that's the same every week, and I open it and I sit there, and whether I know anyone's going to come or not. And it's really created a great community forum as well as a space for questions right after workshops, which has been great. And so what I found that really maximizes these office hours is to these are very specific to remote. So the first thing it says, maybe consider having them remote. Even after, we all go back, I'm very much considering keeping these remote because it's very easy for someone just to log onto their computer and ask a 5-minute question, then to, get up, come to a different floor, maybe even a different building, maybe even from main campus down to South Lake Union, which is not a small trek for a 5-minute question because I'm not on main campus, even when I'm in an office. So I'm really, it's really about accessibility. Plus then they can be easily recorded as well. The other thing is, since I don't know if anyone's going to be there, I used to just do my job, do my work, but I actually found that, that pulled my focus away from the purpose of these and really hurt when then somebody would jump in halfway through and I'd have to scramble to figure out what we're talking about. So instead, what I found is having another task, like I do Tidy Tuesday, dedicated during this hour where somebody could come in, and even if they don't have a question, we collaborate on it together. Or using that time to answer messages related to our questions in my group, so that I already have a set aside time that if no one's coming in person, I at least can take care of some of those Slack or email questions. The other thing I found really helpful was having themed events. So we have a new data set coming in 2 weeks before. I would have a 1-hour session dedicated to questions to get ready for that new data set. As well as maybe a little intro of these are the issues that I think will happen with these new data versus the old. And that really just cut things off real quick. Things never became an issue because we'd already talked about them before even getting the data, which is really great. Pitfalls that I found to avoid, the biggest one, and really I could just stop here on them, is changing the time, day, location, canceling it. The extra effort to, look up where it's going to be this week or when it's going to be this week is just a hurdle that is just enough to prevent them being nearly as effective. So I have the same time, we're on a quarter system. So every quarter I survey the group and see if that time still works for the majority of people who think they'd be using the office hour. Letting it turn into a social hour, particularly in these remote times, I still struggle with this. And that's fine when it's just us coders, but it has been a bit of an issue when somebody who's not a coder pops in and sees that we're already just hanging out. So they just start to hang out when they actually had a question, but they didn't feel like stopping our fun, quote unquote, to ask that question. So that's when Tidy Tuesday became a thing, is really, okay, I'm going to be working on this and we can work on it together and we can talk. And this is certainly an open forum, but let's not just talk about this weekend's hikes or something. We'll talk about that after. And then the final thing is taking too many additional meetings for those individual questions or spending too much time on that email. This is not my main job. I love it. I love projecting R to everyone I know, but it's not my main job. And so really protecting this hour as a time to answer questions and, saying please come to the office hour. I can't do this all the time, all day. And it's really, key to remember that in terms of workshops and office hours and making materials, just a plug, you're not alone. You're not alone in the community you're building. You're not alone in this community. We're here today. And these are just the 2 resources that I've found the most helpful. Educe is a program I founded at UBC. And then the Carpentries, which we've seen several people mention, has a lot of great material that you can use as is or take and customize to make great workshops, great themed office hours and things like that. So with that, I'd like to thank, this is my main research group. Everyone in this photo has now coded in R at least once, which makes me very proud. As well as our ladies for always being supportive and helping with the first talk version, and then Educe, which is that UBC program where I basically learned how to teach. And with that,
wonderful. That was a great talk, Kim, and it's amazing how one person can kind of spread their influence like that. So thank you very much.